Section B of the sound system of my church. In this section, we are covering, in the field of measurements, acoustic awareness, especially for newer or typical modern church buildings. And this mainly because acoustics is the most overlooked aspect of church AVL. We know that faith comes from hearing the message, taken from Romans 10:17, but for most churches, the auditorium or sanctuary is not designed and built taking into account speech intelligibility, which is one of the main raison d'être of the room. Understand that it doesn't matter how good the predication is if people can't hear it properly. In some cases, the church sound system would be acquired and installed by people with not enough knowledge and experience who will not worry about acoustics. Although audio and acoustics are closely linked. And no, I repeat no, the audio system cannot compensate for bad auditorium or sanctuary acoustics. Acoustics should be considered as being part of church AVL. Acoustic quality should be considered during the early stage of construction or retrofit construction, the design. This design should not rely on oversimplified posts and articles in magazines and on the internet. Do-it-yourself acoustics. By far, the preferred option would be to hire an expert, a professionnel, a qualified acoustical consultant. But if you have no choice, after having studied the question seriously and rigorously, with some measurements and accepting some form of trial and error process, based on basic concepts, you may achieve satisfying results, better than having dry walls with no treatment anyway. Please focus on the words study seriously and rigorously. And still, make sure you meet the construction standard for a commercial building. The main idea here is learning before doing. There are good books, websites specialized in church acoustics, online acoustic courses, and we see here the Hyperscientific Calculator app. Quite useful. You would also have to be familiar with materials such as acoustic cloud, acoustic foam, acoustic membrane, acoustic panel, bass trap, diffuser and sonotube cut in half-moon shape, and why and how to use those. As measurement equipment is concerned, here is an example of what you may use. The Room EQ Wizard software and the uMic 1 USB instrument microphone. The software is free and the mic is quite affordable. Not a high-level professional kit, of course, but nevertheless very useful for basic tests. Here is an example. We have a pair of Bose F1 802 speakers and subwoofer kit. The speakers have 4 dispersion patterns. How would I adjust or calibrate that? Using the sound level or acoustic power level meter. How would I adjust or balance the level between a speaker and its subwoofer? With a dual tone generator. The graph on the spectrum graph window would be something like this for each component. A graphic equalizer can be calibrated using the sweep generator and the spectrum graph window. 4 basic tests can be made with this REW software and uMic microphone, frequency response, reverb time, clarity, and noise level. The waterfall graph is also interesting. The frequency response test will include both the room and the sound system result. Normally, you will not need much correction using the graphic equalizer. Only light attenuation for some frequency range, probably. Reverb time, what is called the RT60 test. Reverb time for a sound to decay or to be attenuated by 60 dB. There are several points of view on the matter, but many agree that you should be aiming at approx 1.4 seconds for the auditorium and 0.5 seconds for the micro TV studio. There are other elements to consider, such as the frequency and the audience hearing condition. Clarity for speech and music. This test is a guideline for intelligibility. It measures early reflection, reverberant sound. The 50 milliseconds or C50 test is for speech. The 80 milliseconds C80 test is for music. For the result, you should be aiming at approx plus 25 dB. The frequency, of course, has to be considered. Noise level of the room. The background noise. This is not a NC, noise criteria measurement, but it's a good indicator. You should be aiming at approx 30 to 35 dB for the auditorium and 25 to 30 dB for the micro TV studio, which would be great. The waterfall graph. Its purpose is to assess room resonances, frequency spectrum, and decay time. With the knowledge I acquire and the equipment I own, I do not consider myself as an expert in acoustic. Really not. Far from it. But by using what I learned, making some basic measurements, and with a trial and error process, I may help my church in a relevant way if we cannot afford a professional consultant in acoustics. A word on soundproofing. Good for my micro TV studio, but also for my sanctuary if too noisy. Techniques proposed would be to use second layer of drywall, double stud walls, sound isolation clips to float your walls or ceiling used with resilient channel, mass-loaded acoustical vinyl, acoustical curtains, acoustical panels and foam, acoustical floor underlayment, sound isolation carpet, room in a room, and do not forget doors, windows, if any, and HVAC being heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. For more info on those products and how to install them, you may consult a website such as acousticalsolutions.com. This is probably out of reach of most budget, but the idea of a room in a room is to build a floating room inside an existing room. The floor is supported by floating floor devices. For this, you may consult Mason Industries. Please note that this type of construction work should be made by registered professionals for a commercial or public site. That's it for the sound system of my church. You are now invited to my last word, the wrap.